moly.
I didn't say anything.
So all these invitations, somebody needs my attention.
Okay, I would like to welcome everybody out to our City Council work meeting for Wednesday, February 26, 2020. We will start with our, we will now begin our work session of our City Council meeting. Work sessions are designed for the purpose of providing council members with the opportunity to study, discuss difficult issues, gather and analyze information, and clarify problems. During the work session, the council may not make any decisions that bind the city. Though the public may attend a work meeting for observation purposes, there is no public comment period during this time. Other than public hearings and the public comment portion of a meeting, members of the public shall not participate in the meeting unless they are requested to present to the City Council by a member of the council. At times, the council may defer to a member of the public or an attendee to make comment on a specific item. All right, tonight's agenda, any items that we need to adjust or change? Any future agenda items we'd like to add?
Yeah, couple things. I think we need to have a review of some of the options or recourse or strategies we might want to employ in regards to the Olympia Hills vote being approved last week, or yesterday. And looks like it's going to be approved a second time next week. So
Me and you've had a little bit of a conversation about that. I get we can put on maybe the work meeting for the next meeting. I think it might be advantageous to do a little bit of fact finding with maybe a few councilmen between now and then.
Sure.
Would you agree with that from what we discussed? I think what you guys are talking about.
Yeah.
That'd be helpful.
Yeah.
I'll schedule time with that law firm that we've already reached out to.
Yep.
Okay, and then the other one I'd like to just, if not next week, just keeping hot is the discussion that the third grade class brought to us about the compost
Yeah, we're on that.
opportunity there. So
Jared actually has been on that email, just so you know. That class goes off track this week, and they'll be back in March 25th. I think he has an appointment with the teacher in the class. Our parks manager has already reached out to them, and we're looking at where we're going. Is that when you catch me up?
Right behind you.
I lost you when Brett sat down.
That guy.
I was like, where did he go?
So would you please bring up to speak? Is that all council's been hit by the class? They want to do supplement.
So I guess my question on that, I was gonna maybe bring it up with Councilman Henderson. Just wanted to know if he would prefer us to report back to council on the 11th, I believe it is, versus the 25th, so he has information to take back to that class when he reports back with them. We were prepared to report to council on the 25th of March, but if he's meeting with them that day, he may want some information to take to them, so we may want to look at bumping that up on the agenda, depending on what he says.
okay.
I don't have any issue with moving that.
Yeah, me neither. I think it would be good. I just I'm glad it's moving forward. I just would like to keep updated on how that's progressing.
Question is,
Whenever a group of kids is willing to take that much work and come forward, they should have a reward for that.
Absolutely.
In terms of our deliberation and consideration. So I want to make sure we.
operational side, I was thinking, okay, where do we collect that? Where do we have it at? And we start to go through because it's the wrong material. You don't want it in there.
Right.
It won't work. It takes years for that compost to become usable. And it actually puts off the methane gas when it's decomposing. So there's all those considerations you want to take into account.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah. That's,
We hadn't had a chance to talk about it much, so.
no, it's okay. So brought it up anyway. So maybe on the 11th if we have something to report. So okay.
Okay, any other future agenda items?
Well, I want to, I guess, bring up something that we had discussed as a possible agenda item, and then it wasn't. And honestly, I'm just kind of hearing some, I guess, confusing information on it, and it just has to deal with. I know there's a few texts amongst the council a little bit with regards to the concept of a potential boundary adjustment with Riverton, and again, we decided not obviously to have anything on this agenda pertaining to the discussion. We had some stuff that Alan had put together, and I know he sent that out to everybody, which I think will be very helpful. But I guess as I reached out to those involved with Mountain Ridge and stuff, it seemed at least the information I got back from them was they're still, I guess, confused or have some questions of where the desires of the council lies. And so, again, having us had a few texts involving the agenda, and that was on there, I guess I was a little bit confused with that response from them. And so, again, I wanted to bring it up here in terms of future agenda items, that if that's something that we need to discuss, then let's get it put on the agenda to discuss. But if it's, the consensus is that that's not something that that we don't feel like is worth the time to entertain, then let's make sure that everybody is clear, including the potential developer down there who would be impacted by that, and make that clear so that they have clear direction to move forward with their application. Because the understanding I had was, again, we had potentially identified that application to be on our regular agenda for this week, and that applicant, which they have the right to do all the time, obviously requested to pull it off. And at least when I inquired as to, what can we do to help, get this moved forward, which is something that, we've talked about for a while, that was some of the response I got. So that, I just wanted to bring it up here to know, again, whether or not that's something that the consensus says we feel like needs to be talked about or not. And if it's not, then great, let's move on. If it is,
I think it's
then
pretty
let's
easy.
make sure.
I've told Dan consistently for 2 months. I told Steve Maddox Thursday or Friday. It's in their court. We're not going to spend any time working on it. If we're at a fork in the road, they have to decide which path they want to go down. We're in a position where we've said we will consider either one, but they have to decide which one. We're not going to go down them both at the same time and help them try to make a decision or have them try to see which one's better for them. They need to tell us which way they want to go. We've said that we're open to discussing either one. And his response is, okay, that makes more sense. I'll have an answer for you by Monday. I want you guys I haven't heard from. But to me, it's on them. We shouldn't be wasting any time or effort or taking resources away from anything else that we need to do. We need to have a financial analysis done on UFSA. But I was told we have no time to do right now, but we're having them spend time on this, monkeying around. So to me, it's pretty easy. The ball's in their court. They're the applicant. They need to tell us what they're applying for, which direction they want to go, and we'll go down that road.
I agree.
In all fairness on the timeline and now it's time, that request is actually on that area was requested back in December in a council meeting. He'd already been working on it. When Steve asked for it again, he was really close to finishing. Yes, it did take some time to finish, but the pause is right now we're in budget cycle. And I'm just asking for any more financial analysis. We table them until we get through the budget process.
And I'll tell you, that's why I pushed back on it, was because it's like, look, if they're gonna apply to remove it, then apply for it and let's do that. But we spend enough time deliberating things in this meeting that we shouldn't be deliberating, I don't believe, things that are not even applied for, because we don't really know what to deliberate. Is there details? I don't know. Here's a concept, let's pull this, and it's like, what's the details? Do you know what I mean? Are you pulling the whole thing? Are you pulling this? Are you gonna supply this? Are you gonna supply that? What's in it for Herriman? I have no idea until I saw some formal application or proposal. What is there to deliberate? You know what I mean?
So as far as future agenda items, to make sure that we're staying on track here, neither one of you are in favor of putting this on a future agenda until they make some sort of application.
Well, and I agree with Jared that it's the applicant's decision what way they want to go. I guess the piece I would add on to that is, if they don't think that it is a viable solution that would be supported, I don't think that they would even spend the time considering to go down it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but how do we know if we're gonna support it if we don't know what it is for sure? Bring an actual proposal with details and say.
We've
is
said
this
we're open to
something-
the discussion, give us
Well,
something to
and
discuss.
I guess for me, I've made it very clear along the way that for me, I'm not in favor. In a city that's growing and building and expanding and doing all those things and all the things that come with it, I'm not in favor of giving away part of the city in order to make that happen. So that's just my general principle, I think, in terms of the plans and the general plan that's been continually worked on and forecasting out the things that never contemplated actually giving away land to do that. So generally, I would say as a city, I don't think it's a good move for us to give away to give away land that is currently within our city boundary. Secondarily to that, I would just say, because I've had the chance to, and Alan has done some work on that, and I've been able to see some of the final numbers, I think that that backs. Again, it's not their plan, it's something that's purely financial and still very high level, but, the numbers at least that I seen, and again, I thank Alan for sending those out to everybody to be able to see them. The numbers I saw supported the fact that there was long-term, it was still financially beneficial, regardless of all the other pieces in there, that remained in the city long-term, so.
But you've used the word giveaway a few times there, and I don't think anyone on this council is willing to give away anything in the city. There has to be something that was very beneficial to the city to even consider that. So if they brought a proposal that said, here's all the benefits to the city, and it wasn't a giveaway, it was, wow, it's something the city could benefit from, then it's worth considering.
That's the
So,
concept
and
we said we would
tell
consider,
them,
but
and that's exactly what I've
there's
already
nothing beyond a
told them
concept,
too.
so why spend any time on it?
Steve, do you have any comments on whether or not we discuss this at a future meeting?
Yeah, I do have some thoughts. So to answer your question directly, and unless there's an application made, no, I don't wanna have any more conversations about it. Secondarily to that, just to kinda add some color to this conversation, I think there's a lot of, attempts to get a pre-vote. Like, what do you think about this, and what do you think about that? And there's a lot of attempts to peel off members of the council one-on-one, or even two at a time, and get their buy-in to certain ideas or certain concepts, and then use an agreement on one principle as a way to say, well, hey, Mayor Watts, I talked to Clint and Jared, and they're on board with this, what do you think? And I'm not very happy that kind of conversation has been going on. I feel like get some mixed messages, and I've taken messages not only before this body, but to some of my constituents, because I thought there was clear direction, and then when something comes back up and that may not be clear direction, now my integrity is getting called into question, and I'm gonna have to draw the line there. So, yeah, either make an application and find out what our thoughts are, or don't make an application and don't find out what our thoughts are. But if you gotta ask me ahead of time, I'm not doing that anymore, so.
Just so that the council's aware, I think I'm in the same ball as Clint, that I don't see any interest in considering a boundary change moving forward. It's just not something that I would generally consider with the city at this time. And so I also would not want to see that. I don't see any reason to have this on a future agenda item. So, any other items that we want to discuss for future agenda?
Okay, Mayor, it's not a future agenda item, it's just agendas in general. We met Monday and let you know that last week being a short week with a holiday week, and there are a layer of complicating things to get it out in time. I'm tired of seeing staff be here to get agenda out 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night, so we can get agenda out, because by the time we get all the information and we get the presentations, which I know you like, so so we need to backdate even more. So we have to go back, we figure it's gonna take 3 weeks. From the time of the council meeting, so the 11th, we have to have the packets in place or developer stuff in place to have it to give you to a draft. So you know it's coming down the pipeline, so that staff or whoever involved have time to put the presentations together, so we can review the presentations, make sure it's solid information, because you know, you've let us know that it has to be accurate and very current information, which is weird because we're saying 3-week gap. We thought it was gonna be backloaded even as far as 4 weeks. And so all the developers get the word out that you've got to get in way ahead of the game and get us in the track, because when we send that draft out to council, we already have the presentations in place. They're already starting to be reviewed. And if you see stuff you want on, you need to understand that's gonna be coming to the future meetings, it's not gonna come on that meeting. Because when that happens, to try to throw that on, it may be just a simple staff report, which is still a page of getting information, type it up and have it ready to go, because everything will go in the packet. Your city is doing a phenomenal job making sure your 800-page packet's out. to the public, not just you, to the public.
Right.
And that's strained the services of the people I know you care, like to see them go home. But right now, we have a handful of people that I have to look down this table that I'm seeing here until 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock almost every single night. And they start at 7:30 in the morning. That's really unfair to our team, and we'll burn them out. To what you were saying, you take vacation and stuff, what you said when you came that last week. So I'm saying, is that something you wanna go to? If it's a simple item, we can get it done in that last 2 weeks of discussion in a work meeting. But if we're looking for a presentation, a bigger, broader thing like developers or economic thing, it's gonna have to be way
Make
in
it whatever
advance.
deadline you need it to be.
Well, I also talked to Brett about this, the other day too, and I think that when we get our preliminary agenda out to us, if there's something we like, oh, this really needed to be added on there, and we feel like it's something critical, then maybe we have to accept that maybe the full presentation wouldn't be there, but we think it's critical enough to talk about it that we might not see the full slideshow. Do you know what I'm saying? I think that we should have some give and take on that a little bit, so that if we think, no, we've gotta talk about this, I need you to bring as much as you can and be prepared as much
I
as you
think
can.
that goes back to what we talked about before, we wanna discuss these 2 points or whatever the critical need
Yeah.
to, that one critical point to discuss, not the entire.
And I would maybe amend that to say that I'm okay doing that in a work meeting, like,
Yeah,
if there's a discussion point in a work, that's different, but if it's in a general meeting agenda item and it's not complete, it's not an agenda item, right?
yeah,
Right,
sure,
and you know
I
that-
agree.
Even you all made the compliment to us about having the presentations even for the work meeting done.
Yeah,
It
that's
allows
awesome.
you to have some insight in before coming to meeting. What we're looking at, if it's a change, it'll be very slight, small staff report, and like, I'm trying to think what's top of my head. We got them in the budget, but we always try to get that ahead of you, a week, meeting ahead. It's just these small lines, a small staff report, it's not a big presentation at that point, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So we'll triage that, but we are sensitive to what you've asked for. It's just, I'm asking you to be sensitive to our time, and I'm gonna pick at Jackie a little bit, because we were in here late last Thursday night to get the agenda out to you all. And then, where I feel bad, and thank goodness we have this person that wants to work for us, 'cause we abuse our employees too much, right? But she has an hour drive after she leaves here. I'm home in bed by the time she gets home. And that's unfair to her, and she's willing to do that for us. And she actually told me, and sorry getting on the sidetrack, I always do, right? 'Cause I want you to know the story behind things. Her husband says, you gonna be late? Yeah, I'm gonna be late. This won't happen every time. We're gonna get this processed and it'll smooth out. So, thank you for giving me the nods and the look that we'll work with it. And if we feel like we can't make it for the reasons you've already given us, the applicant pulls it off the agenda, or we don't have all the material, we'll give you a notice of why it's not gonna happen. Is that fair?
Yep,
All right.
absolutely.
Thank you.
One other issue about, future agenda items, I think sometimes as we're going through our work meeting, topics come up and we think that's something we should add. I don't know if this is a formality that's not necessary, but, maybe we need to keep that agenda item open for the duration of our meeting, so that we can continue to have the right to add agenda items if we feel it's appropriate, coming out of our discussions. I think we've done that anyway, but, you know,
And in future agenda items, you know,
I'm
just-
gonna actually
email us.
ask the recorder on that one, because our recorder is probably the expert when it comes to things like that.
work meetings are pretty open. Go ahead.
When the council makes a comment that they would like to discuss something further, I make notes throughout the entire meeting and I add them on our forecast agenda
Okay.
for them to be on our radar.
okay, perfect.
Yeah, I don't think we need to necessarily keep
Just-
this item open, but yeah.
As I was thinking about that, I'm like, I didn't know if
We
we
get-
needed to do that formally.
We're a little hypersensitive on that, so we track you through the whole meeting. There's 4 or 5 people writing down the things, and then we circle out that I told you before.
watch it
And then we go back and watch it again and listen to it again.
Hi guys, watching in the future.
Make sure we're not missing anything.
There should be hazard pay.
All right,
That's
that was a fun item 1.2. Moving on to item 2.1, Black Ridge Reservoir discussion. Wendy Thomas, Parks Director.
All right, so you all are aware of Black Ridge. I wanted to bring this up again today because it's Councilmember Henderson's favorite topic. And we have our new councilman here, and so we wanna have
You live right
discussions
next to
to
it.
see how
I'm
you
so
want to go about
excited to have
Black Ridge in the future. As you guys know, we've closed it early the last 3 seasons due to the algae bloom. And that's been a blessing and a curse, right? It causes concern with our residents, and it also allows us to close it down, so we don't have as many problems. So our question for you today is really if you want to continue the swimming option, the non-motorized watercraft option. And secondarily, we have a resident interested in running concessions there, which we currently do not allow, to see if you're open to that. We have discontinued running concessions there because it's just a black hole, but he thinks he can really make it something special. So I don't know if he reached out to any of you. I gave him,
Yeah,
I
He
shared
did.
your email with him,
Mr.
Esselman.
Esselman.
And so I just wanted to kind of hear your thoughts on how we proceed forward with Black Ridge for the 2020 season.
Wendy, can I ask you just a follow-up question? If we were to consider allowing somebody else to do concessions up there, what would be your thoughts? Certainly, in order to make it fair, we may need to open that up to solicit things for other, is the city looking to sign some type of contract where we would get some revenue off of that?
We could go that route.
How do you foresee that potentially being structured?
I think a pull of the revenue would be good, a revenue share at the end of the season. I think it's a really risky move for anybody that wants to do concessions up there because we've traditionally closed right before Pioneer Day for the past 3 seasons. But I haven't talked to this gentleman about any of those things, and we would certainly have to go out in an RFP process, I believe. So we're open to any of those kind of agreements.
Insurance issues.
Yeah, I thought we had a
Liability.
discussion about this a while back, and there was some reasons why it was probably not a good idea to do concessions. Will you remind me? Do you
For
remember?
someone else to do concessions?
Yeah, do you guys remember having this
Yeah, I
conversation
remember.
about concessions? Sorry.
There was liability issues, there was,
That can all be turned over in an agreement.
But isn't there also does our code even allow it right now? I mean,
So they would be limited as to first off, they would be limited as what they could ultimately do there because you have to have everything prepackaged, you can't cook anything because the kitchen's not appropriate for those types of things. But currently our ordinance does not allow any other vendors at Black Ridge.
or anywhere, if I remember correctly.
Just Crane Park
Just Crane Park.
and Butterfield
During the city
during
sponsored
events.
events.
Yeah.
My 2 cents on this is I'm hesitant to change where we are now. I think that the moment, this goes with everything else, the moment we start letting somebody do it, everything comes in and we have all sorts of other issues that we have to deal with. And to be fair and consistent, I think, in my opinion, I'd rather just keep it the way it is. And I know that somebody wants to, sees an opportunity, wants to take it, and I want to encourage that. But from being on city property and being I'm not comfortable with it.
Other thoughts, ideas?
They already know how I feel about this.
I
I have no thoughts about this right now.
I actually would be open to the idea. We've created this space for recreation, and it's been a popular one. And outside of the factors that we have no control over, the algae bloom and those other types of things, they are what they are. We have obviously been through the process to know that it's not advantageous for the city to operate any concessions up there. However, there is facilities in order to do that. There is still people who would like to do that, and like to see those up there for when they are up there recreating. And honestly, I think that certainly there's things that need to be considered and need to make sure that are very well covered in any type of a potential agreement that would be there. But again, I think that if you have somebody else that's willing really to put in the work and to take the risk that's involved with it, and that there is a potential, maybe, no matter how small it is, a potential small revenue sharing piece of that at the end, it's something that I'm willing to consider.
I echo what Clint said. I just would like to see the pros and cons of it, you know what I mean? And obviously it would have to be an RFP and that kind of a process. I don't want to create a big issue and big extra task for anybody to do either. But with the understanding, probably gonna have a very short window to sell concessions. You think you can really make money?
And that's just it, I think there's a lot of people that think, hey, that would be a fun thing for me to do, but once they look at really some of the parameters we'd put in place and the, you know, it has to all be prepackaged, you know, we're not gonna let them bring their food truck up in there and set up, those types of things, I think it's gonna weed out a lot of those people to where the ones that say, okay, what's an idea that I could do simply, out of that space and still potentially make a revenue off of it. And again, there's some good entrepreneurs out there. I think that they have the ability to be successful in that.
Yeah, well, the other thing too, I think, is that we have a facility there that's just sitting there going to waste.
Yeah.
And so it might be a way to utilize a useless facility for right now. And, you know, we've spent the money to put it there. I do always want to echo though, that we did not build this facility for recreation. I had to have the interview last year about this, and I think it's important for us to always reiterate, this is not primarily a recreational facility. It's a secondary benefit that sometimes we have if there's no algae bloom. But this is for secondary water, period. And so if there's some extra benefits for the residents, that's awesome. But we always have to stay focused on the primary reason for this reservoir. And if there's some things that cause to lose those extra privileges that are allowed for recreation, then so be it. It's not the primary use of the reservoir.
You keep looking at me. So to me, the answer to the first question is, you know, all those problems and all the costs we have associated with going away from swimming is not needed. We're gonna allow swimming in the facilities there, find exploring it. The big question to me is, how do you determine who gets to? And how do you avoid a lawsuit of favoritism that you let this person do it, not me, if you let them have it?
It's just an RFP process.
Right,
Yep.
so if we wanna do it, figures, brings back, like, the same thing, brings back a proposal to look at. I'd rather just not have swimming allowed up there, and you don't have to have all the extra costs that go into it.
There is a significant cost associated with that.
So we've talked about then the concessions. I've only heard from Jared about swimming. I mean, does anybody have any different opinions on allowing swimming this year or changing those rules or?
I think we stick with the way it's been operated in the past.
I don't like the swimming there either. I don't like the cost of it, and it seems like such a short-term benefit for the cost that goes into it. I'd like to see actually what it costs us for the amount of time that it's open, but, I don't know.
Honestly, I'm really ignorant of the issues that are up there. I don't have any idea of what the costs are and how those are affecting us.
It's not cheap.
So, and even if I knew all that, I'd probably wanna understand what public opinion is, if there's a desire to have concessions up there, if the neighbors are okay with, now there's a reason for more people to come up and stay longer, you know, I think all of those, right? So, look, I mean, I know that's all going on, but I just don't have an opinion.
How much are we spending on
Information,
police
so.
officers up there?
Last year was, well, actually, the last several years have been skewed because we shut down at different times, so, you know, I think we spent as much as, was it 30,000?
Yeah, well, that's what we have budgeted, but we don't
Yeah.
ever hit that.
We're usually hitting around 13, 14. Yeah, and when we shut it down, then, originally, when we shut it down, we had to post police officers to keep people out of the water, right? And then we thought, if you wanna get the water, you post to get the water, because that's just crazy. So, as it stands right now, we've shut down upwards of a month, a couple times during the year, but we're seeing right now, because of all the phosphates that are introduced into our water systems, that we're gonna shut it down every year, for a certain amount of time. But yeah, we have, drinking is clearly a problem up there. We have not had a drowning in the last several years, thank goodness. We do.
But we've already had 3 up there, right?
Yeah, I think we've had 3, 2 of them were before I was here, so I don't know much
They were
about
all
those.
before I was
but,
here,
yeah.
so.
Again, drinking's one of our bigger problems up there. They've gotten wise to it because we obviously go down when they have the beer bottles and shut it down, but now they bring it in cups and those kind of things. Secondarily to that, we've had some folks involved in gangs from as far away as Ogden, come down here and set up on the beach and cause problems, and that sometimes spills into the neighborhood. So we've had to address that. Really what happens is on our holiday weekends, it's a mess. I'll just be frank, on holiday weekends, it's awful. We have 2 cops up there all the time during the holiday weekend, the entire time. We have problems with parking, we have problems with neighbors, as you've all heard that over and over again. People doing awful things in yards and changing clothes and urinating and those things. So holidays are a problem, and it is expensive. But because we close it down during the year, those prices get skewed every year to be different, depending on how long we close it down for.
Do you think that you would still incur a cost because people just simply be using it even if it was closed? Do you think people would swim and stuff there and try to recreate there even if we said it was
Probably, yeah, I mean, we would have to
They
imagine.
do even with it being closed,
closed,
with the algae.
right? With the
We'll
algae.
still see them out there.
Yeah, we still see them out there, and originally we would go down there and say, hey, this is really bad, it's very fast death factor or something like that, and they'd go, and? Okay,
I'm training for a triathlon.
yeah, I'm training, okay,
Okay.
I don't know what to say about that, get in there. And so it is costly from the law enforcement perspective, I think.
When we have closed it down and it's just been the trailhead and the playground and the pavilions, it's very manageable. But the weekends and holidays are very busy.
Our 3-day weekends are,
How much
Not a lot.
stress and damage, and this may not be, you may not be able to answer this, how much stress and damage is it putting on the facility itself to have those individuals in there? I mean, I know I've heard that they put up, 2 years back, I think they tried to put in a winch or something that winch people across the lake and they punch through the clay liner, and, I mean, I know we've had issues with that. Do we have any idea what the ongoing maintenance cost is in addition because of that?
Well, it's kind of split between Anthony and Justin, and unfortunately Justin's not here. Justin does a lot of the secondary water piece of it, and then Anthony maintains the grounds.
Yeah, so, I mean, I would say as far as the grounds go, it's fairly minimal. It's no more than any other park out there. I know water incurs a significant cost with their, I mean, they treat the water for pondweed, and the chemicals that they use for that is fairly expensive, so that's a significant cost, but you're gonna have that whether it's open or closed. So, I don't know if it makes a difference really.
so we were 15 on law enforcement, 21 the year before. It seemed like our first year we were open, we were significantly higher than that.
That was the first year that we were having
Oh,
all those
yeah.
issues, we had an officer up there every night.
The COPD was.
Yeah, I mean, it is, we've got it to a slight roar right now.
We were just writing a check, I don't know. But then we spent
Justin's not here, but
upwards of $150,000 on a parking program.
Anthony covered it, but to keep the algae out of the sprinkler system and the pumps and stuff, that's why we have to have the aerators and the treatment, so it's gonna happen regardless, so.
But it seemed like we did increase the, treatment component for the algae for the swimming, didn't we? Do a little
We
bit
did for
more?
a short time, but we've actually seen the problem show up in the sprinkling systems as well, and a complaint by residents.
Gotcha.
In fact, I can't remember the last time we did it, maybe Anthony knows, we have to go in and we're down the way, have to go clean that off because it's so much growth happening in there, it's causing problems.
They brought it to us if we wanted to increase the
Yeah.
treatment
Oh,
for
that's right.
swimming, and the
Yeah.
cost was significant.
So we
We said,
said-
no, we're just gonna stick with this, huh?
It may be great if it's a.
It's, to your point, it's a secondary water system.
Yeah.
I think to me, that's always been part of the problem is that people don't understand that. They treat it like it's a public pool, it's an open body of water. It's just,
It's reservoir.
yeah, it's,
But
the way
I,
people treat it and use it is different from what it's
Yep.
really
Yeah,
built
for sure, but the problem is I don't think that we're gonna stop people from using it by saying it's prohibited swimming.
Even
We're not
if
the
there's no
only
fence
ones, I
around,
mean,
they'll still
look
get
at
in there.
Daybreak, they went through the exact same thing, put up signs and educated people, no swimming, there's still people that go out there, you know, once in a while, but they don't have the issues that they did before. So, I mean, that's where I'm at, I'll have been, will be until things change, the cost is, to me, is not worth the benefit.
Steve, what's your, you say leave it as is right now, and
We just made it sound awful, but.
No, I
maybe
just,
it's right in the
like, again, I think, I mean, there's a lot of issues, right? I mean, there's cost benefit issues, there's public opinion issues, there's, you know, the health and safety issues that are going on there, there's, you know, how do we enforce any policy that we have, right? and what burden does that put on our, public safety officers, right? This is not just an easy answer, and before I could really form a meaningful opinion, there's a lot of questions I'd have to get answered, so.
So on March 11th, would you like Justin and I to bring back some figures for you? And maybe an agreement that would go on concessionaire should you choose to go that route?
It'd be the next March meeting, 3 weeks.
So March 25th.
That's a presentation you're gonna put together, it's not something simple.
Yeah, I mean, if this is something we really need to make a decision about one way or the other, yeah, let's get all the information and make a decision. But, I'm not prepared to
Our,
speak
our
on it.
direction, like previously, and so correct me if I'm wrong, has been status quo, continue allowing swimming, etc. So it's just that the annual question, we want to continue that, and then the secondary question of the concessions.
That's something that we'll consider.
So as far as concessions goes, if we're gonna encourage people to be there and the facilities there, and you think it's workable, I'm fine with bringing us something to look at.
The one benefit that I see from having a concessionaire there is we don't have part-time staff there. They would empty the garbages and clean the bathrooms and do all of those things, so we could remove our staff
You put all that in agreement.
from being there, and that's a good benefit.
First on the agenda, because I know a lot of council heard this, and not much has changed.
You can be on any of those agendas.
Maybe, August, Councilman Shields has always talked about some road trip meetings, educating on some other issues in the city, that he thinks road
We
trip
could
is
we
windy.
could bring that on the, yeah.
Steve
And
needs
just go
to-
with them
needs to
and
experience
understand
it
what's
this
going on
season,
there.
See all the numbers.
Next year you'll have a whole different.
We've gone from parking passes to gating it, we've gone from fencing, we've gone from public opinion, we've gone.
Look, if the majority of the council feels the status quo is okay, I don't really have any objection to that. But if we need information on how to go about selecting
That's why
and
I'm listening
approving
to
somebody to do
you.
concessions, so.
Well, I think
What do you want,
that,
I mean,
I
I
think
don't,
the public likes the amenity, there's no question about that.
A segment of it does.
Yeah, for
My
sure.
side of town says we don't use it, we're paying for
Right,
it.
A lot of your public uses it first thing in the morning till about 2 or 3, and then they leave, and then we see more of an outside people come in there.
I mean, it's being in my district, I have people in my district that would love to use it because of its proximity. And then I got the neighbors that live next to it that maybe aren't so excited about that
Yeah.
happening, alright?
So I'll say my overall opinion, the cost is not worth the benefit, but this year I'm fine with status quo and.
get a year under your belt and then you'll have different feelings.
In all honesty, I mean, this has been an ongoing issue for years and years and years. And I'm almost more of the opinion of maybe it's time to consider. By the time we get to the point that that the algae bloom is shut down our the swimming, there's a sigh of relief from staff and from, it's audible, it's physically, it's like, oh, finally, it's,
Everything to check.
I think that's an issue, and I think that
With seeding the pond.
in my opinion, if our staff is having that much problem with one of our facilities, it's not even originally designed to be a recreational facility, there's a bigger issue that we need to deal with. And we've been trying to deal with it little bit by little bit every year. I mean, I know all of us have seen this year over year, except for maybe Steve.
I'm gonna be correct about the design that's involved in that. We talked about it in secondary reservoir, it was actually going to Jupiter Canyon originally. It actually was going on Bluffdale property back in the time, so you're talking quite a while ago, 12, 15 years ago. It landed on this site because it was problematic trying to work with Bluffdale at the time, okay? So it was shared between us and Riverton. The cost of putting it in, and from the very beginning, because it was being dropped in the middle of a subdivision, we said, because it's using it for open spaces, what amenities can we get out of it? And so I'm part of that dream child of creating a sandy beach, because you don't have sandy beaches in Utah, right?
We have one.
The downfall, we didn't know it was so successful.
So the only,
And so it was planned to be a recreational site, but its primary use, like Sherry pointed out very clearly, its primary source is a secondary water source.
the only change that I would want to see in this situation would be the consideration of no more swimming. Because I think that would, like Jared has said, resolve a lot of the issues. I'm not ready to make that decision yet. I would appreciate some more information, particularly on how much is this really costing us year over year. I mean, it's a lot of money that we're dumping in to have an officer
Yeah, or two.
Or two.
Holidays.
on holidays just sitting up there. And yeah, that's great, and our residents love that there's an officer sitting outside their house making sure it stays safe, but is that the best use of our resources? And, you know, especially when we're already always struggling to make sure we have enough officers and give them the support that they need.
Well, I'll be honest with you, Mayor, it has been a struggle at times to find officers to work up there, because on the holiday weekends, it's a little bit of a madhouse.
And I don't.
They just go from one issue to another. So I've struggled at times to get it staffed. We've been able to staff it, but it's been a struggle.
Well, I have full confidence that our officers will always keep the peace in our city, but shouldn't we do our job to make their job, shouldn't we do everything we can to make their job as easy as possible?
I would like that, yeah.
And when we know there's an issue and we know we can fix it, when we've tried other things that don't seem to quite be fixing the issue, I'm more leaning towards maybe it's time to start thinking about not allowing swimming. I mean, should it stay a recreational facility with the playground, with everything else that's up there, with the trailhead? Absolutely, there's no question that shouldn't be continued to be used. But swimming in itself is what I see as an ongoing issue. So,
And it gets heavily used in the mornings, but we don't have any issues in the mornings. It's all, people working out and paddleboarding and things. We don't have that issue. It's when it becomes later in the evening, especially on weekends, any weekend, but more so on holiday. So.
that's my 2 cents.
Okay, so in March, we're doing our budgets now. We will bring back an idea of what that agreement might look like. Should we enter an agreement with a concession person? Our budgets
Budgets for public safety.
for what we anticipate for the summer. Does that sound?
Yeah, and not only just anticipation, but maybe some past history of what we've spent in the past on it, just that we have this comparison.
And it would be helpful to have that breakdown per day, just as a per day cost.
Oh, I don't know.
Just divide the number of days.
Well, yes, but it won't. It won't be.
When you closed it, other than that, I could give it.
So if it's possible, if it's not, I understand, but just
And
so
then
that we
any
can try to
maintenance costs?
compare, or maybe per
You know,
week.
we can give you a weekend cost, a
Yeah.
holiday weekend cost, and then the week cost.
Yeah, there you go, just so that we can kind of understand what we're actually looking at, more apples to apples as opposed to different time frames.
Got it.
Thank you, appreciate it. Any other questions or discussion on this one? Awesome. Item 2.2, discussion of the Wasatch South Hills Land Use Plan. Michael.
Thank you. I think we're gonna bring up a PowerPoint. So we had our first community or development meeting with staff and with Steve Shields. And from that meeting, we thought there were a number of issues that we wanted to bring to your attention. One of which is this land use plan for the land use plan amendment in connection with the master development agreement that we've been discussing for South Hills, Wasatch, MBA. So we just wanted to spend a little time to make sure that you understood this element of that amendment and see if you had any questions, see if there's any other things that we need to research and prepare for you in a future consideration of this request. So as you know, this is a plan that was approved essentially in 2008. This was the original kind of land use plan, development plan that was approved. This is a plan development. See all the different pods and the different types of land uses that were proposed and approved by the city council at that time. There have been a few different amendments that the city has considered since 2008. One of which, and the most recent, is this amendment in February 2016, when we added what was called the Bolden property, for development of the Zions Bank Stadium and some of the property around that. So this is the area that was included in this amendment. And at the time, of course, we did, the density for this project is 4.5 units per acre. And the city did specify units that were assigned to different pods. You'll notice that the area of the actual stadium, or most of the stadium, was not included in this pod plan. There are some soccer fields right up in this upper corner that did have some dwelling units assigned to it. And this was an exhibit that was submitted to the city at that time. Again, you can see that where we have a couple of soccer fields in this portion, and you can also see some density that was assigned to it. This portion did not receive any type of density designation at the time. This, of course, is where the Soleil Lofts was developed, and then this was a project developed by DAI under South Hills, Monarch Village, and I think it's changed names again since then, but that's under construction. When this was approved by the Planning Commission, there were a number of conditions that were attached to the property. We specified that the number of units is 2,039. We talked about making sure we had 8 soccer fields, and then there was some discussion about what the Soleil project would look like. We were looking at a project up in Logan called Four Seasons. And then, as we know, we've seen a few different iterations of the proposed plan in connection with the amendment that the city's been considering right now. This is the latest one, and some of the concerns that we've mentioned to the council in the past is that now the developer is showing density associated with the RSL soccer stadium. They're showing units. They're not saying where those units are going to be used, but they're asking that the city recognize units for the stadium, the rest of the stadium property. And then I know this is really hard to see and hear. This is that new multifamily development within the commercial center. This is the part that we're trying to amend and add into the South Hills Wasatch MDA. And essentially it's 240 units, 120 on each side. So that's a key issue that we're needing to address as part of this amendment. Now, the current MDA does talk about the use of density, and this is in your packet. You can see that density is allowed in areas that allow for residential development. So if there's a commercial zone that does not allow any type of residential use, like most of our zones are now, then you can't put density in a commercial zone. The zoning that we're talking about potentially rezoning for this property is RM. Does allow for residential, of course, and it's 20 units per acre maximum. So it says that the density is supposed to be spent essentially based on the zone, the approved PUD, and whatever provisions are in the PUD ordinance, essentially the development agreement. This vested laws which allow for clustering of such density. Now this is essentially our clustering provision in the MDA. It's called density transfer provision. What it is saying is that the sending and receiving zones have to be the same zoning district. So even though the zone has a maximum, I mentioned to you that the RM zone, for example, has 20 units maximum. This does allow for a developer to exceed that maximum as long as the sending zone is the same. So you have to have a sending and a receiving zone. And this has an example of an R210 zone, and that you could exceed the R210 zone base maximum as long as you meet that criteria. So this again is a clustering provision.
Average over the entire.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. The sending and the receiving zone has to be the same. So with all that said, here's kind of the key points of understanding what we're trying to balance and make a decision on. So Zions Bank Stadium was added in 2016. No dwelling units were assigned at that time. Now, in talking with city staff, it doesn't look like that's off the table. The council could consider, as part of this MDA, assigning units to that property as long as it was included in the MDA. Again, the 2016 amendment had a maximum of 39 units. Now the current plan is anticipating 2,451 units. Now, based on just pods 35 and 39, the acreage of that is 48.43. Times that by 45, we should be increasing the overall density by 218. They're asking for 240 units to be spent in 35-39, so we're a little short of what we need. Plus, we don't have another RM zone within the existing MDA. Now, the developer could change property to an RM zone and thereby creating a sending and a receiving zone. That could be one of the solutions here as to how do we, solve this problem. I'm suggesting that we be careful and that we follow the MDA, that we are in compliance with the use of the density provision that I've outlined for you and the density transfer provision. The other problem that we're having is that through this whole process, we were under the understanding, or acting under the understanding that Crest was going to be willing to release this property, which is in their MDA right now, and we were going to transfer it into Wasatch. And we're hearing lately that they're not currently interested in making that transfer, not releasing this property from their MDA. So now we potentially are talking about adding it to a new MDA and having two MDAs on the same property. And thereby, that's what we're saying, that's a problem. We're making essentially two contracts with two different developers on the same property. We think that's a problem.
Pretty ugly.
Yeah. So, those are some of the issues that we need to try and resolve, assuming that we are gonna continue working with this partner. Everything says we are.
So can I ask a quick clarifying question? So the plan submitted January 16th that has the 2451 dwelling units. Does that number also include what they had assigned to the RSL Academy piece as well?
That does, however, those numbers were not shown to the planning commission. The RSL piece was new since this was shown to the planning commission. So that may be
But
another.
that number does contemplate what they put in there of 195, is that what you said?
Under their current, let me look at this. Yeah, 2451 includes the
The one
RSL.
before?
Yeah, yes.
So, okay. So you, for me, I guess I wanna hear some of the reasonings of why they believe that density should now be allocated to that space on a piece that's been approved and built and everything, gone through a process long before. Why now should we be going back and assigning density to that? That's the first.
It sounds like the issue is that Crest isn't releasing it, so this is.
That doesn't have anything to do with.
So this is their
But is
workaround,
Rosecrest
but
not
then it
releasing
creates
the
the two
property or not
different MDAs on the
releasing
same
density?
property, which we can't.
Well, that's
do.
pot 35 and pot 39 where we would have the pot issue, the overlapping MDA issue. This issue is outside that, just on the RSL Academy piece, which isn't contemplated in the Rosecrest MDA.
Thanks for saying that, cause that's what my understanding is.
And certainly has been through a process to get
That's
what we
even
have there
two
currently
different
with
places,
with there never being any discussion about
Yeah.
density being assigned to it.
Maybe
I have not had
confusing.
any direct communication with.
What are
Wasatch
those
on that.
residential, what are they asking for then? That was my assumption, was that adding that there, they were saying that
They're gonna
that
want
they
to
were
disperse
entitled,
it
that
across
they
the
were
rest
entitled
of
to
it.
those
Sure.
and wanted to move.
Yeah, so they're saying we're gonna have 194 units assigned to this soccer property.
And then they're gonna work on
But they're
transferring
not
those.
currently used and they're available for transferring.
So maybe this
Yeah.
is where the disconnect in the logic. I was assuming reading through this that that's what they're trying to say. They
Maybe.
wanted to use on pod 35,
Maybe.
39?
But like I said, I'm saying the sending and the MDA
It's
is
the wrong
saying-
zone.
Yeah, the
But
sending and the
but
receiving zone. has
doing
to
that
be
creates all kind of problems. But if that's not what they're trying to do, are they trying to increase it further by that number? They want the
That's what it
density
appears to
of
me.
39 plus the 194?
That's what it appears to be, yeah.
It
Yeah,
may be
that's what
that
I'm saying
putting
is
it in the-
400, more than 400 additional units are being requested.
Right.
It's-
I'm confused.
That doesn't,
Yeah,
It sounds like the overall issue is that those two parties need to agree on
Well,
their agreement.
I agree that when it comes to the MDA, I'm not at all interested in having two MDAs on the same property.
And I don't think they would be either.
I believe that
I'm new
is-
to this, but that doesn't sound good either.
I believe that is so problematic for us as a city moving forward. Secondarily to that, personally, I am not interested in going back on to the RSL Academy site and now assigning density to be used and potentially transferred anywhere within there. I believe that we went through a process. There was many factors involved in that process of getting the RSL Academy there that included lots of other provisions, land donations, and all of those things. I am not interested in contemplating additional units being added for that site.
Can I ask a
in this
question,
plan.
cause I'm trying to, I wanna make sure I understand what's happening is, there was an MDA created that assigned 4.5 units an acre on a certain amount of property, right?
Right.
Later on, the RSL property with the soccer fields, all that gets built and included in as part of this?
Only that one little triangle piece
Okay,
where
well,
there's two fields,
But not all the rest of it has.
but not
was
all the
there.
rest of it.
Okay,
Yeah.
so now the idea is they wanna include all the rest of it and then get
And assign
another
density.
4.5 units of acre for all of that as well?
Yes.
No. Okay, moving on.
So, okay, so that maybe clears it up for me.
Then they can go
They're
fix
trying-
the
They wanna
MDA.
add basically the soccer fields to the MDA, just increasing.
They wanna add the rest of the RSL
land,
site.
Which ups.
I think they're of the opinion that's in the MDA, it just did not receive any units at the time.
But none of the maps that you showed indicated that was part of the
Right, the
MDA.
land
Wasn't part of the
plan
2008?
that was approved at the time didn't include it.
Right.
It doesn't show that.
It was clearly articulated for
Right.
whatever the small triangle piece is there with the two fields on it.
And maybe the reason why they didn't show it, because there weren't any units assigned to it, so they didn't call it a pod, they didn't, talk about
But when
spending
you go
units
back
on
to
this property.
the conditions of approval from February 2016, that very first one, 13, that very first one just gives the assignment of the total number of units.
Yeah, and if you,
So for me, why are we looking to do
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
to approve another 400
It's not
units?
density per acre, it's total units over acre.
Over the
Yeah,
MDA.
that's it.
well, if you take the acreage at the time of that approval and times it by 4.5, that's how you get the 2,000.
Sure.
It
But
was
then
just
they
a
bought some from
calculation.
Rosecrest.
But are you saying that when they bought that other property,
That's
the
the
property didn't come with density? Rosecrest won't transfer the density with the acreage, is that the problem?
That is
It's the
what's
pods.
happening right now.
Okay, so it's
right?
not about
And those
they
are two
won't
different
transfer the
discussions, though.
property, it's they
So
won't
I think we're
transfer the property with the density.
I'm hearing that, Rosecrest wants to retain those units that were assigned to that property, right?
Right.
They chose not to spend those units on this property when
Right.
they sold it for,
And my
So-
guess is,
Commercial development.
that their thought process behind their, by retaining those, is that they're going to move them someplace else
Yes.
within their master development
Yes.
agreement. And again, I'm not interested in assigning two density values in two MDAs and allowing them to overlap and be distributed in other places.
That they would retain 450 units and we're going to add 200 more units, 220 more units.
Isn't there something in the MDA that requires the density to go with the property? Or we can
No.
just, so
Because there's that
not-
transfer provision that's in all the MDAs.
yeah. It's just based on the acreage of the development times, for example, it's times 4.
So here's the
on-
issue, right? Going back to that argument. The MDA says if they acquire any land, that they get that density.
That's right.
Rosecrest does say
But
that,
that's-
right?
So,
No
so
provision about
if I'm
this.
Wasatch, I acquired that land, you have to give me that density I acquired, it's part of my MDA. But that land's in an existing MDA that says it's Rosecrest, so you've
But they
got
also
two-
lose the acreage in that MDA associated with it.
But they still retain the unit.
So,
That's my,
so
that's
how-
my
so
point, is how do
How
you
does that
retain
work?
the units when you,
When you've
Well,
lost the
that's why-
acreage.
that's
when
why-
it's,
that's
when
why I
that
think that's
calculation is
wrong.
made over the overall acreage of an MDA to come to a unit total. Now, if you're selling off that land, it should be reduced by the amount of acreage in there, and it shouldn't be in there just because an MDA says, it shouldn't still be there just because an MDA says that it's there, if that acreage is not there.
I agree.
The
But
appropriate unit
But
should
I
go.
can see that there should be some units that could be assigned to
Absolutely,
that property.
absolutely.
So that ask is not weird to me, but it's weird to me that you would think that you could sell off land but still get to keep all your units.
Right,
That's-
that doesn't make
that's-
any sense.
So that's what we're saying,
That makes
these,
no
if
sense
these
to
two
me.
pods get added into the
Wasatch Hills.
Wasatch Hills MDA, they would get the same units assigned, they've already had assigned to the rest of their acreage, right? Which would be the
Yeah.
218 new units.
Well, the
or whatever, right?
218 is based on the zoning that they're requesting for in there. It's not
Right.
based on the acreage that's leaving, that's based on those two RM zones that they're asking for,
So,
and how that's
Well, we'd have to,
calculated.
if we rezone it, it assigns density,
Yes.
okay, I understand.
Michael, in 2016, when we was dealing with Reno RSL land and all the agreements, did we not transfer some numbers off the west side of Mountain View corridor and move it to the east side for solo offs?
that's what I've been told, yes, and that's how we were able
And that
to
was
get
a
the
big number
density.
then, it was already moved
Yeah.
down, and now they wanna move, add that more onto that, and then move them to the west side, back to the west side where they should've took them off in 2016.
Right.
That's some of that history.
Those westerly
Now, to be
islands.
fair,
I was trying to complicate it more, but that was what was going on. We was very focused on
I'll
RSL
go
coming
back
in
to my
with
previous statement.
what they
It
wanted
sounds
to
like
make
those two
happen.
parties
Yeah.
need to work it out.
Yeah, I think that same thing too, because if they can't, until they figure out what they're doing amongst themselves, then we don't really have a lot to talk about, right?
right. I wanted to just let you know what were the issues that we were still trying to work through.
Sure.
Because of some of the changes that we've been making as an organization, we haven't had a lot of face-to-face contact with our development partners on this issue over the last few weeks. And they may very well still be negotiating, discussing. I haven't heard, no one's told me this is definitively where we're at, nothing further is gonna change. I think it's still all being discussed.
So, Michael, as I'm looking at this, I'm still looking at this number 13, on the 2016 conditions approval. The number, should we switch back to that, the conditions of approval?
Yes.
So number 13, it says, if the acreage of the project changes, then the planning commission will determine if the overall density should be modified. So regardless of what happens, if we change the acreage or whatever happens, don't we have the final say anyways?
Yes, and we should probably, because this is a proposal that the commission hasn't seen, we probably should send it back to the planning commission,
Absolutely.
have a recommendation and come back.
So
to
that's
you.
kind of that's kind of where I'm looking at this, is at this point, it's like, why are we even talking about this? This isn't something that should be before us, so let's go back to planning.
Like I said, that was new information post planning commission.
Okay.
So there's three things here that I think, three items here that I will give my input on. One, the density now being requested or assigned to the site of the RSL Academy. I believe that ship sailed a long time ago, and I'm not interested in doing that. Two, I'm not interested in having overlapping MDAs on the property. Those, if they're going to transfer the land, then those two landowners need to get together and figure out how they're going to appropriately resolve that issue, for us to consider it. The last one being right there, amending the development for pods 35 and 39. Again, they're requesting 240 units, but by the current, what would be allowed in the zone would be 218.
If they have a sending and receiving zone, because the
They don't even have
the
a
RM
sending zone.
area is actually quite small, I think it's like 14 acres or something like that.
So I'm just going off of the 4.5 units.
Yeah, right.
Really, that could be resolved in the MDAs.
Yeah.
In the MDAs. In terms of going above the 218 to the 240 that they have requested for those two residential developments in there, to your point, I think we stick with the language that's in the agreement that if there's no other sending units to be able to take them over the 218, then the 218 is what they get.
Yeah, or whatever we can spend in that RM
Or whatever
zone.
you can spend in the RSL.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so we need a
That's-
sending and a receiving zone.
Yeah.
So if they do have a sending and receiving, we could accommodate the 240.
We could accommodate if they
Okay.
had, but right now they don't have that sending zone
Got it.
for this to be the
Okay.
receiving.
Then what he said.
Do you have enough confusion that you can send it back to planning
Yeah,
commission?
We do our
and I
best.
know we have a very anxious voice over here,
And
but we'll work together
please
on
work
addressing
with that
these
voice
questions.
and
Yeah.
bring us any further information we might need, so.
Yeah.
Any further items? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and move on to item 2.3, discussion of Harriman Innovation District Community Development Plan. Heather Upshaw.
You need this, Heather.
That would be great. So some of this is somewhat related to the zone we just talked about, but this is regarding the CDA. Yeah, see you guys.
sorry.
Run them all off.
Probably doing like that.
Guess
Oh,
what?
Heather, you
Guess
tried?
what?
Oh, wow.
Did I?
Yeah, I've heard that. Almost.
I'll put it in what they're doing.
What it boils down to is the Wasatch and Rosecrest State.
Yeah, they have an issue they need to resolve before we can weigh in, but
What happened to Heather?
To me,
Where'd she
it's
go?
the same thing, it's in.
They're
Oh,
trying to
there
get
you
her.
are. She's
It's in theirs.
She is down.
No, no.
So she's
It's
outside.
in their
Like an
court.
owl. Think of it.
that is a strange thing to go back and add.
Forgive me.
Just remember, we are still being recorded.
It's fun.
Oh, am I driving now?
It's just a consideration point, like,
Okay,
Cool.
wanna go ahead and get started?
your
I'm willing to
Argument
take
for that.
any information that's presented to us.
Yeah.
And I'm confident that our staff will get that information.
Yeah, I don't know what that means either. Is that the, trying to resolve the issue?
Okay,
Trying to give us the
So,
information now?
I mean, I've got the
Fixing
presentation on my
my
Yeah,
computer, so I'm good.
we've got it now.
so I just wanted to update you all on the two CDAs that we have going right now. The one is the Herriman Innovation District CRA, and it's confusing the CRA CDA. CRA is the new term that was adopted about 2 years ago. CDA was when Herriman Business Center was approved, so
But they're essentially the same
they're
thing,
the
right?
same thing, we just like to change the name. So we met with Salt Lake County on both of these items. The Herriman Innovation District CRA has been approved by all of our partners, our taxing entity partners.
That's Bullfrog, correct?
That was for Bullfrog, yes,
Except,
except for UFSA and Salt Lake County. Salt Lake County, we met with them last July, I believe, on both of these, and then they started to change their policy, so we kind of got put on the back burner, like, we've been waiting. Yes, huh?
I'm just curious, has there been any discussion about the fact that basically this request was in prior to them changing the rules on this?
Yes, we did mention that. We haven't gone to the county council yet, so we'll see how they feel once we present. They did originally have, I think, a 50% max, and they took that off. So we are asking for 75% from the county. We met with our ad hoc committee, and they seemed favorable. So we just need to be scheduled with the county council for that. And then on the Harriman Business Center, thanks, John. The Herriman Business Center, we're asking for an amendment to the interlocal with Salt Lake County. So the plan's not changing, the budget's not changing, it's just the interlocal. So this was the Herriman Innovation District we just talked about, showing the 38 acres where Bullfrog Spas is constructing. So this is a 15-year period for the CDA. After we pay out our expenses, which is the 10% housing, we will pay out 50% back to the school district, and then we have administration fees. The remaining increment is $7.1 million. Our infrastructure costs are about $7.1 million, so it's like we planned that right on. And some of this is also, you'll be seeing this on March 11th for a participation agreement with the developer for Bullfrog Spas. So some of this tip goes back to him for his improvements as well. So here's your approved contributions. School district, the city, Jordan Valley, South Valley Sewer, and Central Utah.
Real quick, Heather, that 7.1 was based on what we have requested of those other two participating partners, correct?
The 7.1
That
million?
includes Salt Lake County and the
Oh, yes.
fire service.
Correct.
The next
So
one,
it includes 75% with Unified Fire.
okay, I wanna bring up Unified Fire because we put a pause just for a little bit, transition for the board members. There was one pause, but, trying to find out, Jared said maybe we ought to go approach them. But we're not getting consensus from council, should we go approach them and present to their fire district board, or? still, we're on hold, or,
go present them.
okay, did you want, who wants to be involved in that? Or you want us to
Was,
take care of it?
again, was, just clarification, was the hold because of the transition of new
It was
members?
transitions, everything's going on with interlocal, remember all that stuff at the same time.
But we still have the same administrator over the UFSA.
Correct,
Correct.
correct,
Okay.
as of last meeting.
Riverton did vote last week to leave UFSA, service districts.
To give notice. So, here again, it's been awkward for the last 6 months, whether to push this forward or not, and Heather's ready to go. But we're wondering to know if you all ready to go forward, or,
Yes.
Go for it.
okay, right.
Okay, and so with Salt Lake County, we had to show them increments of 25, 50, and 75%. So those are what those numbers are showing. And the Herriman Business Center, this is the area outlined.
Sorry, just a question, participation agreement with Bullfrog, what's that gonna look like if we don't, if we got the other funds?
So I was going to bring it to you in a work meeting, just so you're aware. We brought it in December. And we changed it to say reimbursement instead of incentive. So that was one of the items that we wanted to change. So the participation agreement is tied to the TIF. If we don't get the TIF, they don't get the money.
Do we have a payout schedule like we don't have on,
You
What do
mean,
you mean payouts?
you mean a priority?
yes, that's what I mean, a priority payout.
So it's just that developer and the city.
Yeah.
So we
This
can,
is a lot easier.
Just checking, I don't wanna get the same thing again if we already know there might be a problem.
Well,
but we can add something.
I'll send you questions.
Okay. Casey sells it, half of it to somebody else.
That's where,
Well, so within that, CRA, it's Kennecott owns 2 lots and then Bullfrog owns the 2 lots.
just, let's look at it just to avoid any issues in the future.
So this is 277 acres, the CDA was triggered in 2017 with the school district and 2019 last year for the other entities. It's a 20-year period. This is just a timeline, so you can see when we started working with the county. We met with Wasatch last year and, well, actually in 2018, when they started bringing in their Academy Village plan showing some of this residential, and we said, no, we have a restriction, so we need to get that amended. So we came here, showed you the plan, and now we're moving forward, albeit slowly. So they have 50 acres within the CRA boundary, and so this is what we're asking. We're asking for approval from Salt Lake County and Unified Fire Service on the Innovation District, that's 75%. And then with the county, we're asking to amend the interlocal to increase the acreage from 27 to 34 acres. They don't tie it to a unit number, so we're still working on the units, but it's just an acreage request. Any questions?
Just tell me.
What?
I'm sorry?
Thank you, any further questions?
Yes, that was your outside.
Oh, that got me.
Alright, we'll move on to item 2.4, discussion of an amended interlocal agreement with Salt Lake County pertaining to the Herriman Business Center.
That was the same
That's
thing.
the same thing.
That's the same thing.
So we're gonna then move on to 2.5, planning updates. Michael.
We just wanted to give some information to the council, and as needed, you're welcome to provide feedback on some of these. Again, this came out of our community development meeting that we held. So Teton
And
Ranch.
just my, I think this is something we talked about in that meeting, is having this portion a part of this meeting a little more regularly, where there's these planning updates.
Planning
So,
updates,
yeah.
yep.
Right. Cool. So as we know, we have a master development agreement on Teton Ranch, off of, south of 118th and off of Pioneer. The northern half is being graded and developed for single-family lots currently. The southern half which is the preliminary plat on the left-hand side, is needing to go to planning commission for plat approval. But as the council knows, there was a proposed White Barn Park. Oops.
The barn's not gonna
Yeah.
happen, shocker.
Right here in the corner.
Well, that was supposed
And
to
the-
start the next day.
Council elected to
I want my
not
steel
include
buffalo.
that in the Parks Master Plan. And so because that's not in the Parks Master Plan, we can't commit park impact fees to that park. So now the question is what to do with that property. The property owner is suggesting, or has agreed that they are willing to move the open space requirement, because they still have to meet their open space requirement, into the center of the project. I've seen different options, maybe even some neighborhood parks in the subdivision. I think ideally we're talking about adding more open space along the trail and the drainage channel. But they are also saying that they would like to suggest they could do maybe a couple of acres of commercial on the corner.
You have to give up the units for it.
So they are still saying that they would meet the same number of units that were in
Not the
the.
same number, they have to give them up.
Okay, okay, that's your position.
Mhm.
Okay, anyway, so that's their suggestion, and it would require an MBA amendment.
Where would they move that commercial to?
Commercial, like I said, would just be right
Yeah,
on the
Just
corner,
on the
right
corner.
here.
Yeah.
So it'd be a gas station.
Yeah,
They
Right
leave
across
that
from
there and then move the remainder basically
And
that's
then-
dedicated to open space.
Gas
So what was the
station and
total
have a
acreage
park
of that
center, right?
as open space in that area, that corner, that white barn
I
park?
think there's
What was
no
that total
distance.
acreage?
2.5.
School's right across the street.
Right across the
Right,
street.
but
So based on that, my question is, the idea then is to zone 2 acres of commercial, but they're still gonna put 2.5 acres of open space
That would be a question.
in there someplace.
all I know is that they're saying they would still meet their
Same
open space
number.
And keep the
requirement.
same number.
Yeah.
And make everything small.
I find that difficult that math, I'm not saying it's impossible,
Right,
but
right.
that's it, and I'm guessing that the planning commission.
there is new
also-
math these days that I'm not familiar with.
No, this has not gone to planning commission.
The math
The
is
main
that all those
reason-
lots will be smaller. They keep their same number.
Yeah, they
make
have
all
to be a
them
little smaller, right?
The main reason why it was appropriate for the council to become aware of this is it would require an
So,
NDA,
yeah,
amendment, which is
amendment.
completely in your
And I would
purview,
say
it's in your
this-
lane, right?
I'll remind everybody, this was the subject of a successful referendum that the public is very invested in.
So if the
Yeah.
Makes
council.
makes sense for the planning commission to say move the park inside or even closer to the
Yeah.
channel and join those up, fantastic. And even for me, that my neighbors might not like a gas station on that corner, I'd even be fine considering that if they give up the units, but this is the same,
Thank you for making me aware of it.
same,
I
same,
have no
same
problem
deal they
making
try to
me
pull with
aware.
everything.
To Jared's point, I'm okay considering the commercial, but again, there has to be the appropriate. They have to still meet all the requirements that were set on them in the original approval. And again, I believe that would have to require some reduction in units in there to accomplish that. Now, your comment of, opening up, I think that there is some opportunity, obviously, to open up and create some more usable open space along the drainage and the channel there. That being said, I don't think that we should give that that's the only place it should be, because I think there needs to be some usable flat space in there for a park, if that makes sense.
Program.
Well, yeah, because
But-
I mean, if it's along the channel and it's not usable, they get a
That's my
deduction in it
concern,
anyway, right?
But I'm gonna
They
look to
have
Wendy now
do more.
I don't know if you've looked at this or considered that of what your thoughts are on that, but that's my thought is, yeah, you can put it in the channel, but that may not really
No, we
create
want
the
it
usable space that we want.
If it's closer to it where you can, that usable space matches up with the trail and the usable part on the other side,
Right.
great, no, not just.
That's what we've talked a little bit about, is maybe the 2.5 acres or whatever it ends up being on the south side is more of a passive
Park with trails and walking paths and those kinds of things, while the 9 acres on the other side is your active playing
Play
fields.
area.
this is all very preliminary, right?
Absolutely.
Or we keep it on that corner, and then that's a great staging area for that stinking school that they put on the other. Yeah.
Tell me how you really
Yeah.
feel, Jerry.
So,
You've driven by there?
just to clarify,
They need more
again,
parking.
clarify my position, I'll entertain that, but I think that there has to be other adjustments in order to facilitate, to really truly make that happen. And the appropriate places at the planning commission for them to look at that.
They'd have to lose the density that goes with it and then go through that whole process.
I look forward to any
Okay.
proposals that are brought forward.
Thank you.
Is that big enough?
Next one is this draft 118th South Master Development Agreement. We do have a general plan and zoning amendment applications have been filed on this project. They have not had a public hearing, we don't have a planning commission recommendation. And the council is aware of this project. We have C2, proposed C2 zone on the north, open space of some type in the middle. And then there was a proposal for M1 down here so they could have indoor and outdoor storage. We have been suggesting that that should be a C1. We do allow for storage units in the C1. They're interested in the outdoor storage so they could have outdoor RV storage. Again, on the staff level, we've been encouraging a C1 zone at this location. Now, most recently,
C1 prevent the
C1
would it prevent RVs?
it would not allow outdoor storage, so I think that would prevent the RVs. Recently, there's been some interest, suggestion that maybe instead of a C2 zone, they would like to entertain or propose a auto mall zone on this corner. They haven't officially changed their zoning map amendment application. I don't know if they really are going to do that. That's just something that I've heard as an idea. They have DAI, who's the developer, has completed their UDOT application for the right-in, right-out, down here, for the storage. I understand that now that they've completed their application, the city needs to do some steps on our end. We were looking for some type of commitment from UDOT that we knew we were gonna have access before we entered into an agreement. But, so that has progressed some, and like I said, we've gotta do some work on our part now. So that's just an update on that project. We're assuming,
Look forward to seeing what comes out.
yeah, that
Say the
will,
last bullet point,
Yeah.
we reviewed an NDA,
I thought we had shared a draft NDA on this, John. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe we haven't handed that
So we had-
copy out to you.
what, about a year ago, gotten to this stage, they did the meetings with the neighbors, I don't know.
It was last summer,
Right,
yeah.
right.
A few more, and I think we'd said, as far as, the neighbors were concerned about the height of office buildings, whatever.
Right.
But we looked at, I mean, from our point of view, we said, right in, right out, we'd have, that would have to be documented, that's the access there would be no access on the east side. There'd be walled off, whatever height of the precast wall, but we'd want in the MBA that the office park would go first or be built in tandem, so we don't end up with storage and not the good stuff sort of thing, and that was kind of
We started talking about it, I don't think we'd
where it
actually.
kind of ended.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was at the neighborhood meeting and the South Jordan residents on the other side were concerned that if that was programmable space, that people would try and park in their neighborhood to get access to the programmable space.
And I think the last discussion of that is there probably wasn't really the feasibility to do the programmable space, it'd
Yeah.
be more natural
Just
passive.
Open space.
Yeah, so this exhibit is outdated. We
Yeah.
will probably
Okay.
end up seeing
Yeah.
some more natural
Got it.
passive
With regard
I mean,
trails.
Just an
I love
open
to see
park with
soccer
a trail
fields,
coming
whatever,
along.
Or just more trail connectivity.
Yeah, I understand.
So again, that will, most likely, the next steps here will be to start to engage the planning commission on public hearings on this.
I'm still supportive of that proposed plan in, some form of that moving forward. I think that those have been good identified uses and keep in play the points that we talked about previously on that.
Office buildings right there would be so good for the retail across the street and, I mean.
Yeah.
I wanna be
that'd
sensitive
really
to sight lines from those office buildings and things, but I think there's mitigating things that can be done for that sort of
Yeah.
stuff, so.
Okay.
I like the idea.
We're open to auto mall too.
All right,
At least I am.
yeah, I'm over to Automall there.
Auto mall zone is an auto mall zone.
Like I said,
It is, I will just say, from my perspective, based on, the work that we've been doing to try and accomplish, I personally don't think that's the best use over there. in the
I
fact
get
that,
what you're-
in the fact that I think that that's where that, if it was five or so years down the road and things were moving over there potentially, but I don't want it to
Just sit forever.
to sit or to deter. I think
And or
that
interfere with the other
interfere,
efforts, yeah.
absolutely, I
That's
think
fine.
that there's significant, so, like I say, I have some reservations on that. I do think that an office building here would be,
Yeah.
would be very appropriate, yep.
I'm open to discussion.
Awesome, next.
So the Herriman Crossroads Master Development Agreement, we've talked about this a number of times, we know that they've submitted a draft. We've gone back and forth on a couple of red lines. The most recent response from the attorney representing this property owner, they proposed reducing some of the amenities as far as like just the dimensional qualities, like how much amenities would be provided, even to, reducing square footage of recreational spaces or workout spaces, and just everything got smaller in the last review. The other thing that they did is that we were pushing for at least a mix of townhomes and apartments. And we had included some language in a previous draft in the MDA that encouraged that, and specified that. They proposed removing all of that language and have just described it as multifamily. So it could be townhomes, but it didn't have to be townhomes, or at least a townhome mix. So that was a response from them that I wasn't very happy with. Now, we've looked at this, and I think I told you this last time. One of the advantages of doing the MDA, we could require that the project be developed as a planned development. If we do the planned development overlay zone, we will be guaranteed a minimum of 20% open space. If we don't do a planned development overlay, the open space requirements significantly drop. So there is an interest in the city, if we want to continue down this road and have some type of contractual agreement here, I think that would be one of my high recommendations, is that we require a PD overlay on this
How much
property.
of that land is buildable?
It is not, none of it is in the 30% slope.
Really?
Yeah,
What
it's
about
not encumbered by the slope. It does have
high
the
power lines?
the power lines, so there are some areas that are unbuildable because of that. There's also, of course, the canal, so there are some easements
Are
through
there
here.
gas lines through there too?
Yes.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
the open space is not gonna be gravel space.
No,
It's
no,
gonna be
at all.
hillside.
It's just like
It
the
will
hill
just-
design,
No,
that
but
was
what it does
looks
do
like
is
there.
it reduces the opportunity for more
Sure.
buildable land.
Right. We were looking internally at a potential open space plan to try to get open space in areas we thought made more sense for us. We've talked about a number of trails through this property that would help us to access, the mountain. So we certainly have an interest in continuing this. My position is that I believe we would end up getting a better product if we can just mature this development agreement. We've just been struggling at really resolving these issues.
Based on the last revision that you saw, where some of that suggested language had been removed.
I think we took a step back, in my opinion.
Right.
Yeah.
Has there been discussion about the planned development overlay in this area with the applicant and the owner, and how was that received?
I think it's been safe to say a few months at least since we've engaged them in a face-to-face meeting. I've told them about this meeting tonight. We are going to be meeting very soon to talk about these issues. We just wanted to give you an update of where we were, and I'm assuming that the council still wants us to move forward on trying to negotiate this thing.
Yes, but I would be,
Okay.
I agree with you that I think that the best benefit would come with that planned development
Yeah.
overlay in this area and some of the requirements that come with it. I think that they can put a nice project together in this area, but again, I think that it needs to be structured the right way in order to make that happen.
Okay. And again, what they're looking for out of all of this is just to have those guaranteed, vested development rights. That's what they're trying to
Really?
achieve.
That's what these developers want?
Really,
Their unit
really.
count?
That's their interest. And then the last one is just to let you know that we believe we'll be entertaining some development applications for this property, the Miller property, on Main Street and Rose Crest. We just have been hearing that they're ready to go. We just want to let you know that they're looking at doing some commercial and then single family on the balance of the property.
We're Rose Crest and 120. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Look
That's
out the
helpful.
window.
Yes.
So of course, the commercial would be
That's helpful.
in this area. The general plan is calling for commercial on part of the property, so. Yeah.
Well, you're seeing especially in, you know, what is referred to, I guess, you know, Old Town or historic downtown, whatever, you're seeing that, you know, there's those pieces of infill are starting to become more and more sparse of what those options are out there, and this is one that's certainly been there for a long time, especially once 5600 West went through, so.
Again, I haven't seen any concept plans for this at all.
Well, he's
Hearing
talking
that
about
it's coming.
commercial on the corner, and then some quarter acre lots back towards 129.
I have actually been a little bit surprised we haven't seen it before now,
Yes,
to be honest with you.
yeah, I've been
There's
here
some-
2 years and I've been
There's some things
surprised
that
as
kind
well.
of slowed it down.
Yeah, but there's a lot of great potential right there with that property.
What are the, you say commercial, okay.
Talking about probably,
Single family.
sorry to say, gas station or possibly, and then some, storefront or, facilities behind it. And then that would give a good barrier between the station and the residential.
So they would need to approve these.
Look forward to seeing that
Okay.
presentation.
Alright.
Alright, you done?
Yep.
Okay. Any further discussion or questions on any of those guys? Nope, fantastic.
I did,
Go ahead.
again, I know that we got a little mired down a few weeks ago just in, you know, the negotiation piece. I just wanna make sure, well, first of all, Michael, thank you for bringing the stuff and the information with it. Did we give you the direction that you needed in order to go back and for each of these projects and move? Okay.
Awesome. I'm assuming that the next item will be fairly short, 2.6, discussion relating to the local consent of an off-premise beer retailer state license for the Winco grocery store.
Yes, I don't have a presentation for this. It is a
Can't be on the
permitted
agenda.
use. It's just a step that the state requires that we grant local consent as part of their application for an alcohol license with
And
the
this
state.
is to sell but not consume, correct?
To sell.
Right.
This is on the general meeting,
Not for tonight. I don't think that's-
is there a timeline, is that correct, or is it next week?
It's on the consent agenda, right?
No.
Oh,
No,
okay.
next week.
Sorry.
I have no issue with this, just like I've had no issues with any of the other permits
Okay.
we've done.
This is just a step they have to go through as a grocery store to sell like everyone else.
And they are
If
a
you
good
move
partner.
forward, we wanna make sure we have the nod to continue to get it on the next agenda, so.
Just quickly, since we're talking about it, what, if we got a update just on what their timeline is and anticipated opening?
They're
So
doing
they
interviews
are
now.
starting their hiring interviews end of March, 1st of April.
They're moving quick.
So you're saying there's an opening?
I'm saying it's probably mid to end of May.
Awesome.
I love it when a company comes through and does what they said it's gonna do, and
Right, they might
they're a great partner.
Right?
This is a
It'll be
Walmart,
at the river.
remember?
I'm
Walmart already
joking.
left.
He might,
Walmart already
he might
left.
have to fight a few of us for it.
It's an internal joke, anyway, sorry.
Alright, so there's no issues with that?
Send it out
Awesome,
live.
great, so we'll go to city manager updates. Brad, you've got an 55
No,
minutes.
It's good, because it's a long list. I'll hit some ones I'd like to bring
Nobody,
up.
12 minutes.
Nobody wreck this, please.
Okay. UDOT, conversation to come up, I think it was last week, Blake went to a meeting and Jared actually asked me to reach out to the council members because they were talking about making 126 a state road from Bangor to Mountain View corridor, which we only have a small portion that says, well, yeah, the only concern I would have would be access for a commercial piece on the north side of the road. Later in the week, Blake went to a meeting and UDOT was contacted us, their planning people, about how is the structure 126 all the way up to where the new alignment is gonna be about 6,800 west below Bullfrog. It's a brand new, fresh stuff, but the concept is, Jared was there, that they wanna take, the state wants to own all that road.
This morning, this afternoon,
So that's why it's on this hot list.
a legislator mentioned this.
They would maintain it,
Why do they
there's-
want it? Why? Go ahead, Brett, sorry.
well, the reason they want it is because they wanna call it 111. The old line 111 actually came down Main Street, if you go back through history. There's other reasons, and you know about the developments and stuff that's to the west of that, to handle some of the traffic. We wouldn't have to maintain it, plow it, nothing, but I'm somewhat sensitive to that because I think that you give your residents a better service in some of those areas. I know the discussion will be coming up, and Blake, I want you to tell you what you don't heard from your side about what they were asking, because that's not what they asked last week. Now it's all the way up to, all the way ties up clear across. They're funding $43.7 million to build 111 from Bangor all the way up and around.
There was one caveat that slipped into that conversation. It was being presented as if this was a get for us, but there was a caveat slipped in that there'd be something asked as well.
Yeah, I don't know.
And that wasn't disclosed at the time, so I think we leave it at that until it turns more real.
I was gonna say, Blake may know what the ask is. They ask for property, they ask them for anything when they came to talk to you.
They haven't asked for, all they asked for me was the design plans for any sections of roadway that we built from the Herriman border on the east side all the way to the west side. Any geotech recorders, any just design documents. And then they've asked questions about right of way, what's been acquired, what hasn't, how is it acquired.
The ask will be from the legislature funding part of it.
Yeah.
Right, so, I mean, obviously the benefit to us of a state road is that they pay for the maintenance. Right, and in this case, they would hopefully pay to build the thing, right, and maintain it versus right now we have no state roads in our boundaries. Mountain View cuts through, but no surface collectors, nothing like that. So right now, 126 is a state road from Bangor east, right? So as I drive that several times a day, I always kid my friends in Riverton that I'm driving on their roads and they're paying for it, but I'm not, because it's a state road, right? So the initial conversation that you're all privy to was take Bangor to Mountain View. It would only affect us on that very
Just by the Maverick there, right,
small
yeah.
piece. That's kind of a no-brainer, yeah. But from there west, it's part of a bigger political discussion, and it was pretty clear to me. It was slipped in the conversation, but it was pretty clear that something would be asked. So until it becomes more real, I don't think there's much.
There's some tricks with UDOT roads too. I mean, if you put those through your city, anytime a business wants to do anything, they have to get the access. Remember the issues we had with utility companies and not restoring the landscape? UDOT runs all the permits, and so the city kind of has no say. So all of a sudden, people show up and are shutting down lanes, shutting down intersections. We don't know what's happening.
I recommend as we, it's just information, you need to put it up on your radar, but as I walk through it, some cities have done a shared ownership where UDOT will own it, but maybe we plow the roads and maybe we have control of the access. I'm not sure they'll do this on this project, but that's what my, off the top of my head, thoughts were on some of that as we work through it.
See where the discussion goes.
The comment that I did make was, well, while you're at it then, while there's not houses built up to the edges, well, let's just at least preserve enough right of way for a potential east-west corridor to connect to Mountain View. And then we just have to figure out how to connect to Mountain View with Bangor. We might actually have something.
So you lose the cost, but you lose the control.
Yeah.
There's
There-
The cost and lose the control.
Right, you gotta decide which is the greater benefit. Yep. The other one is, Salt Community College, went to the Senate, came out there, and this is not a bill, it is, because Jared asked me that question, I didn't have the answer, we got the answer there. It's not a bill, it's appropriations for money. Senator Fillmore, Senator Dan McKay pushed hard for it, Andrade and Colmore got all for it, they pushed hard for it to get that funded. They found there was some flaws, and I credit Candace Perucci on this because she found out there's some loopholes from last year's cycle of money versus this, and they changed the criteria last year. And the state has recognized that shouldn't have happened, and should have been higher on the list last year. We didn't get funded. We got some money to study it, to figure out the impacts and get a plan going. They got that money. If they get funded out of the House, that's why I'm bringing it up to you, so push out your House. We talked to Susan Pulsifer, and Candace is all over this. Our House representatives keep working hard as it gets through the House. If it gets funded, in the top three usually get about funded. It will get funded money this year, and so they'll be moving forward quicker than I thought, when I told you earlier. So.
And the answer I got was 60% chance it gets funded this year.
Yeah.
If it gets out of appropriations committee. So we're gonna try to set up a meeting with a few of us, So one, the Southwest Coalition is working, right?
Together.
These are, all these conversations are direct result, that's, we're gonna try to get a meeting with the, Appropriations Committee and a few people, see if we can drive this thing home.
That's good.
That's awesome. That's a tune of like 30 million, right?
I think it's 35. And there's some money coming from University of Utah. University of Utah has a new request for building
On their campus, and they're not happy because they may get bumped for this project, but, your house and center are pushing, we've been in line for 9 years. And we have not only property investment that we've donated through densities in our open space we gave up, but also infrastructure, water lines, sewers, stormwater. So we have a good story to tell, and Candace has really worked hard to bring this light. She went to Board of Regents, she went to the School Building Authority, I think that's what it's called, anyway, the Building Authority. And she's pitched it, and she found there was issues, and she's really been nudging along, and the senator's picked up with and run with it, so it's
She's
good
worked
news.
really hard on everything that I've seen her touch. I've been really super impressed with her.
And with Susan Pulsifer being up on there in the house too, she's very attached to our education programs out here, so we have a good story to tell, we'll see.
Well, and we have to give due credit to our area representatives and senators, because, I mean, as we've had these weekly meetings, it's helped them connect with each other for these things when they come around, because so much gets moved. There's so many moving pieces up there, and different conversations had in different rooms and things. Having this weekly get together that you've done for them has been awesome.
So moving right along, I want to talk about transition team. I was directed to give direction and supported by council to change our organization chart, which is on the agenda tonight. We've been moving through that. Nothing's nailed down and solid until you approve the chart, and then we'll start moving down, nail down other pieces to that in the next few weeks. John Rims knows that we're gonna move away from a contract attorney to bring an in-house attorney, and I have a job description almost 100% there. We're still looking at, actually, John helped make some changes on today, he recommended. And, we feel confident we'll be able to give notice on the actual process. I want to talk out loud with that a little bit and think with you a little bit. We'll go through our normal process, we'll go through the interviews, we'll narrow it down. I think when we bring it down to the last few candidates, I want to do a closed door session with the council like we did with our police chief, and let you see who that, because I can appoint, but it's still consent by council. So you need to give your approval on that. And then that time we'll figure out what the transition period is with John, and then we'll have separation when we feel confident things are on solid ground. Okay? Is there any comments with that moving forward? I will try to keep you updated on other issues going along with our transition team. I want to have Jackie just take a moment, because we're trying not to lose track of some things you've tasked us with. And one of them was the procedure, council rules and procedures. And council, she's handed those out to you. I believe you
So
have them out
everybody should have
in front of you.
received a draft version of it.
So we'd like you to mark those up and then put your name on them, and then turn them back to Jackie whenever you get a time, or we can do it through email, or your voice works best for you. Sure.
Couple weeks should be good, right?
Just one, let you know we're not losing track of things.
This is really good, by the way. Thanks for getting them all cleaned up. That was a long discussion about a lot of stuff, so.
She spent a lot of time listening to that long discussion.
Yeah, I was reading through this, it's pretty good.
To get it right. The other thing is, boards and committees and compensation, we're still waiting to get information back from council, because you're gonna start tracking your hours and start figuring out what it might be to bring that back into the discussion. Remember that? The January 1st meeting we talked about, you were gonna come up with numbers and then have that conversation about the council compensation rate, as you serve on boards and committees, what's the.
I don't remember that part.
So
I thought you were gonna bring us back something based on what current.
When we went back to the minutes, it was very clear you were gonna track, bring us back numbers.
Between you, how much each of you
Talk
put on
about,
your board.
so we can kind of baseline.
How much time you're spending.
Okay. If you guys really wanna see it, I don't know that I wanna put that on paper.
Your wife might get mad.
No, I think that there's, I looked at this the other day, there is a guideline, it's special service, district, no. anyway, cause I looked at it through the water board thing, there is, the state auditors looked through and made up a diagram, there's a document that shows, like if you spend up to 4 hours, the compensation would be, I think it's $60 a meeting. Over $4, I think it's $90 a meeting, is how they structure it for those types of things, like the water board, that's how their meetings are structured, for each meeting, up to.
I thought that's what we were gonna look at was.
Yeah, and I actually have that in the packet in my training packet, I'll just scan a copy of that portion of it, but there is actually, legislation or code or something that's
That
associated.
references that.
That references that, so it just kinda gives a good guideline of what, what they had recommended for if you're at a meeting this long, if you're at a meeting this long, and they pay you mileage, that kind of thing, so I'll just hurry and zip a copy of it and then send it out.
Yeah, that'd be a good baseline, right?
So we'll just wait to get some information back to you and that, and we'll start moving that along as directed by you all, okay?
Yep.
When do you wanna talk on your two items that you gave me, Arbor Day and Midas Creek?
Oh, let's show Midas Creek. We had a really fun morning setting bridges on Midas Creek. So, I just got a quick video.
Just this morning, so.
Just this morning.
Don't drop it, don't drop it.
Fast forward.
So this is one of 3 bridges that will be along the Midas Creek Trail System. We have 2 bridges that will be at Rose Creek, and I think are we installing additional pedestrian bridge at Blade?
Yeah, this is why this is starting YouTube video I've seen
Yeah.
before.
Thanks.
Which tractor end on the ditch? That's.
Both.
So we anticipate Midas Creek and Rose Creek to both be complete by May, and that will be wonderful.
Yeah,
We've
awesome.
got really excited residents in Copper Creek, and
It will be well
Thanks
used.
for getting that funded, that's gonna be a great way to get more sense.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Arbor Day?
Yeah.
I know, that's good. That's a good point, Blake.
It's been a thing that's been.
We have our Arbor Day presentations coming up, and so we need you all to sign our books for all of our elementary kids. So if you can sign it and pass it around,
Might as well start all with Jared and sign and pass around.
we can do that.
Just keep passing. just keep
Do the
signing.
white page, turn the page one more. There you go, on that
Okay,
side.
where she's doing that,
Is there anything else with that?
Nope, that's it.
Love,
No,
Jared.
I was just gonna tell Sherry, we just had that
Yeah, I don't care.
We just don't, it's for meetings, so it's meetings, it's not anything that's done at home, it's just.
I wanna,
Well, I think that the idea was just to take the baseline of that, and then if there's boards that you serve on that are like crazy spending hours in addition to your normal meetings, I think part of it is prep work, right? I think reading your packet and stuff should be considered.
That's
what
part
you're
of the
being-
job.
That's what you're being compensated for, but if you're spending excessive amount of hours in addition to prepping for meetings, then that's.
You mean all of my pre-meetings and after meetings?
everything I have, I'll talk loud while you're shuffling papers around, so I don't wanna bring up cheap cars or things to discuss, but, we have, we went through those interviews on Headhunter for economic development person, and we selected the company, it was the local one, I won't say the name now because we've not entered into a full agreement yet. The cost of $35,000, Alan felt like we needed a budget amendment for that amount, because it was not budgeted for, we'll bring that to you in a few weeks. And, we'll get that moving. And then another thing, we've been reaching out to consultant brokers, and we have some other thoughts about every broker we contact to have a conflict and see if we do some business in the city. So we're gonna figure out a different way to be more creative to get some individuals that might be workforce during that time to help us out bring some economic development. So I'll bring you some plans and ideas and strategies towards that. Probably in email form as we between meetings, so you can give me some nods by next meeting, how to move forward.
I
I'm
think
talking
that
fast.
on that economic development hiring too, is that some of that was like refundable if they don't perform or things like that, right? There was a provision about that.
There's a 6-month, there was basically is it a 3-month or a 6-month guarantee in that one?
Guarantee, yeah.
Yes.
So that's kind of nice to
Yeah,
see,
that
we're
is-
gonna
that
spend
is
the
good.
money with this.
Employees, I wish I would have had a
I
guarantee on.
believe Steve has made it, that's been a while ago, but we're ready to move forward on that. Chief Carr, you wanna talk about your,
I'll do.
but, yeah,
Well, as you all know, I noticed Brett was already getting choked up, so.
Right.
We'll fight through this.
Quit.
I'm gonna hand you what's called a mourning band. We shroud our badges anytime we lose a fireman or a police officer. In this case, we lost Hondo and we have his name on it. These are super important to us and I wanted you guys to have them. Sorry about that, Sherry. As a way to honor Hondo. I unfortunately have a drawer of these that I've amassed over my career. We'll give you a rundown of the ceremony. I'm going to turn the time over to Lieutenant Stromberg in just a minute. Sorry to stand right behind you, Jared, and make you not be able to see. So, it's been a crazy couple weeks. We haven't slept much, Cody and I, and Wendy and others that are helping us, but know that the city's come together to do a fantastic job. We will be honoring Hondo both tonight with a resolution, but this weekend on Saturday for the funeral services. So, Cody, if you want to take a minute and talk about that. Again, hopefully we will never ever see one of these again with a name on it. That's what I keep hoping for, and unfortunately it hasn't worked out great for me over the last 30 years. So please, just know that that's part of us, and we very much appreciate your support as a council. So thank you again. Cody, if you'll run through the order of operations, please.
Sure. This, obviously, as you can imagine, is a significant logistical process. Some of you have been through, unfortunately, events like this before and understand all the planning that goes into putting something like this on. And our hats are certainly off to Wendy and Tammy, who've been instrumental in this process, but our entire city staff that have stepped up to basically, open arms and whatever we need to get this done, to make sure that it's done the right way, to make sure that it's done in a way that respects Sergeant Rick's family, but also honors the sacrifice that Hondo made. So this is a pretty expansive process that we've been through over the last couple of weeks, which will culminate in Saturday's memorial service, which will be held at Herriman High School beginning at 11 o'clock in the morning. You, of course, are more than welcome and invited to attend. We have some reserved seating in the auditorium for both members of HPD and Herriman City employees, which you and your family members are welcome to sit with us there as members of the Herriman family. So there's a whole media aspect to it that Tammy and I have reached out to some of our area public safety partners who have been through events like this before, and everywhere we reach, we're received with whatever we can do to help. And so there will be some other agency PIOs and people who are coming in on Saturday to help Tammy and I manage some of that stuff so that we can put our focus where it needs to be. And so there will be some media aspect of that Saturday morning, and then some very sacred ceremonial honors that we only provide for line of duty funerals, line of duty death funerals that we'll go through on Saturday. So just know that that your team here is awesome, and that we're working through this to make sure again that we provide the best possible service for Sergeant Ricks and his family, that everything that they would want it to be, and to honor Hondo's sacrifice. The end of the ceremony from the high school on Saturday will also include a police procession. This map just went out in a media release from Tammy this evening, so this is publicly available. We'll post it on our social media sites as well. We anticipate leaving the school sometime around 12:30, depending on how long the service takes and how long some of our other ceremonial functions take at the school. Travel down 6000 West to Herriman Main Street up to 6400, down to Butterfield Park, and then back up along Crest, and we'll end here at City Hall. Typically in these types of line of duty death funerals, you have a graveside service that follows the memorial service. We don't have that in this case as Hondo was cremated, but we still wanted to provide our community an opportunity for them to come out and show their support as well. And so we thought it would be a great idea to take Hondo through the city one last time before he's left with Sergeant Ricks for his final resting place. And so we'll proceed through this procession. There will be some traffic impacts, obviously, during that time period, and we hope that our residents and community members are understanding of that. And it's just a way that we can, again, honor Hondo's sacrifice for what it was. Any questions on any of that?
It will be a tough and emotional event. I promise you I won't get through it without bawling. So I actually thought that there weren't many tears left, but again, today I found out there are. So please, we'll be very honored to have you with us during this process. I never imagined I'd be writing a speech for this. Ever.
Okay,
Can I ask the council just one quick thing in relation to that? Is just as I want your input, your request. Obviously, I come from the public safety arena. Have participated unfortunately in these events before, and I don't want to disrespect this position in the city, but I just want to make sure that the council's okay if I attend basically in my Class A uniform from the department I represent in that fashion and participate in that manner. I just wanted to ask the council if they were okay with that.
Yeah.
100%.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm trying to move on real quickly, we got 2 minutes, minute and 36
And we have
seconds.
to
Now we have 32
No,
seconds.
I want to say,
She's got 2 minutes.
Catherine, right. Boy,
You're good.
I want to let you know, Catherine was nominated by her peers, and she is the state, city building official. She got a state award.
That's up to you.
Here again, we love when our team gets these awards. It just tells you we're doing some top-notch people here and stuff. The last thing I have, and you may want to come back to the work meeting to discuss it further, is, because I know it might take some work, the reimbursement agreement of Rose Crest, we actually have found it. There is one exists. And we've actually flushed out why. Since the transition last few weeks, we have been digging, because we've heard the concerns by council, and Tammy and Jackie and Wendy and Blake have been digging into files. Back in 2016, when it was approved by council, and I'll hand them out to you. It got filed under the renewal agency and not in other files. So, but after we found it, I reached out to Mike Bradshaw because he always said he had agreement, and we kept saying, well, where is it, where is it? He sent me his, which actually is interesting. There's a difference in one number that I got correct because it was duplication at the time of the deputy recorder in place at the time that made some minor errors. So what's interesting, we're just going through it. Alan has gone through it, and I'd like to even give you a 2-line or about 5-line. I was going to email those to you, but we've been out here late at night anyway with our SEMA updates to try to get some information to you. Rest assured, we're on top of this, and many other issues you have had consternation on, and we're digging. And I applaud the team you allowed me to assemble in leadership, and we are going to go back to everything that you've had concern about and let me know about it. And I think it's evidence right now that we're going to be strong. We're going to be stronger and better. But remember, I brought ordinances. We are going to go through and reorganize our house. We're going to go through ordinances. We're going to go through standards. We're going to go through agreements. We're going to go through reimbursement agreements. We're going through impact fee agreements. It's going to take some time. We're going to bring in layers on layers and layers of stuff we're going to find. It's going to be okay. This is a good process. It'll be good and healthy for our city moving forward. Thank you.
Nice work.
And I can't take credit for this. It was the other people that we've got in place that's been digging.
Thank you.
I had another conversation with Mike Bradshaw. He would like to sit down and discuss these things because it does give you some flexibility, but there is an agreement in place in 2016 and the mayor in place at the time and the vote and everything else. So I thought you'd want to have all the information. Appreciate it.
That's it.
Finally, yes, I'm sorry we're late, but that was.
So we actually have another 30 minutes.
We have another half hour.
7:30. Brett, I wasn't gonna stop you.
Can we just cry some more?
Because it's my understanding we have a closed session. Do we have enough time to maybe get through some of that closed session before?
No, I doubt it. It'd be a rush.
The guy that will be here is planning to be here
Until afterwards.
I will tell you this.
I have one item I could do fast. And we're closed, we have two, if you want.
That's your call. I do know this, not only with Hondo's presentation, we have a gentleman that wants to give a plaque for he's crafted himself as an artist, wants to give it to Ben Rick's family tonight as well during that time, so. I'm sorry I'm a little bit of a mess. We shouldn't have brought up Hondo, because it's just puts us back in our emotion state this week. I will say this, I can't, and I'm not gonna understate this. You need to understand that direction council has given me and direction council allowed me to do moving forward, it's not been taken lightly. I'm here late at night with a team of people, going through things and getting direction, starting to set a good strategic plan to bring you back the information you desire and expect out of our city. And we're not done. Don't be, I'm sorry to say, when I won't say what time it is last night, parent teacher conference last night, because we was here late. I didn't say it, but we understand, we're on board with you. We understand during these times, we're gonna put that time in. And we want to do that. We want the city strong and better than ever. And so I didn't have much time, so. We can go into that one closed door if that's your direction.
What do you guys wanna do?
I'd say if there's something that we can take care of with the time that we have remaining, we should do
Then I
it
will accept a motion.
and get there. I will make a motion to temporarily recess city council meeting, convene in closed session for the purpose to discuss the purchase, exchange, or lease of real property as provided by Utah Code annotated 52-4-205.
Motion by Clint,
Second.
second by Steve. Jared?
Yeah.
Steve?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
Clint?
Yes.
Now vote yes, that motion passes. We will move to closed session. Who do we need?